What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Crew 2, and in this video I do want to take a look at the KS Mass Leader. So I'm not going to lie though, I don't actually know what this car is going to cost if you guys do want to buy it. If I had to guess though, it's probably not going to be as much as a Bugatti, so that's at least going to be good. I did actually get this vehicle when it did come out in the Motor Pass, which I would say many players were definitely mixed on it. It's going to be one of the weirdest hypercars in the game, but surprisingly though, it actually seems to be pretty dang good. One thing I also found kind of funny about this car is the fact that this thing does remind me of the Dodge M4S Turbo Interceptor from the Wraith movie back in the 80s. I never actually realized that until now, but nonetheless though, you can change the colors on this. And then similar to many of the other vehicles in the Crew 2, you can't do anything else to the car besides the liveries and or the vanity items. But I would say guys, most people are probably going to pick up this car because of the way this thing does look. I mean, this thing honestly is pretty dang unique looking. It's definitely going to be one of the weirdest hypercars in the game. It's something you will definitely not see all that often, but one of the things I found about it after racing it just a little bit is it turns out this car does have pretty dang good stability and or handling compared to many of the other hypercars. So now taking an outside look of the KS Mass Leader, I think you guys can definitely agree this car is pretty awesome looking. I really do like the rims on there, plus the overall body design with those side exit exhausts, plus the carbon fiber. I really do think this car is pretty awesome looking. What's kind of funny is when I saw this vehicle is coming back in this season, I immediately wanted to jump back into the Mass Leader and really drive this car around for just a little bit. I'm sure this car probably got some type of reputation from those frozen races as well, because for some odd reason this car would not have any issues on the ice. So if you guys did own this vehicle, this thing was like insanely good on those. That is probably one of the reasons why you guys never saw any like no restriction hypercar races on the ice tracks again, was most likely because of this car. I do think this car also sounds pretty awesome as well, but let me know what you guys think this car actually resembles when it comes to engine sound in real life. But nonetheless though, let's take a look at the interior, which if you guys are familiar with many of the Demolition Derby vehicles, that's basically what this thing is going to look like. But now moving right over to the top speed test of the KS Mass Leader. So I did actually test this vehicle out back in the day when I got it from the Motor Pass, but I want to do another top speed test with it right now just in case you guys might have been wondering if you actually want to get this vehicle or not. So one thing I also noticed is if you guys are running manual, this is going to be a 6-speed, which I really do like the 6 speeds in the hypercar category. I feel like they're probably going to be some of the best, especially for racing, because you can get around turns easier. You don't have to shift as often as something like a Bugatti, but nonetheless though, first impressions of this car from driving it once again, because like I said, I really did not use it a lot back in the day. I'm honestly pretty impressed with the stability of this vehicle as well, because for one, it doesn't lose itself, which is kind of interesting. Not only that though, the top speed on the vehicle is going to be 296 miles an hour, which is going to be insanely close to something like the Porsche Carrera GT, so it does under 300, which might hurt it in some areas compared to something like the Bugatti Divo or even the Porsche 918 Spyder, and I really did just run into that rock, wow. But the Porsche 918 Spyder Silvery Edition in this new Motor Pass right now, guys, does about 312. I would also say that's probably going to be one of the new best hypercars in the game. I was talking about that vehicle a little bit with the Bugatti Interception unit, so I would recommend checking that one out as well. But overall, for uniqueness, I would say the KS Mass Leader is going to be pretty awesome. So I would say many players are most likely going to pick up this vehicle for the same reason that I did back in the day from the Motor Pass, and that's probably going to be the way this car looks. I feel like it really is really unique, and it's kind of like a half Demolition Derby vehicle, which I did want to talk about that as well. So I'm sure you guys noticed the health bar right away on the vehicle. What's kind of weird about this is I was running into stuff in the race in the background as well, and it was damaging the car a good amount, but what's kind of funny though is the fact that I wasn't noticing a difference in the car itself. I'm sure many people were probably wondering about this back in the day as well, because when this car did come out in the Motor Pass, that was honestly one of my biggest concerns. If you actually do crash into something in, let's say, a longer hyper race, will you have to basically drive this car in limp mode for the next like 8 to 10 minutes because it's not going to fix itself? I would also say it's going to be pretty doubtful to see this car pull a Christine move and actually fix itself during the race. One of the only good things about this though is the fact that the health bar does not go down at all, at least what I was noticing. You can basically run into many things with the vehicle and it wasn't going down for me, so that's at least a plus there. It's not going to be like the Demolition Derby vehicles that get absolutely messed up after a little while. But besides the way this car can get damaged and or the health bar that it has, I would say that would probably be many players' concerns. Luckily guys, it doesn't seem to really affect the vehicle all that much, which is pretty awesome. What's kind of interesting though is not only is this car going to be insanely unique looking, I also feel like this car has pretty dang good performance as well for what it is. I mean, I was not really expecting it from that. After using this car on the ice tracks back in the day for a bit, I was kind of wondering how this thing could do on the street. I did want to test it out more. And once I saw this car was coming back, I was like, you know what? Let's go jump into it again and see what it can do. And I would say, guys, I did mention this in the Bugatti Interception video as well, that many of the hypercars do definitely struggle at higher speeds when it comes to stability and handling. I would say many players are probably looking for something that doesn't do it as much. I think that's why the 918 Spider Silvery Edition has been getting so much, like, basically light for that matter, because that car is going to be really good. What I found kind of interesting though is the Masked Leader seems to also be really good at higher speeds as well. One thing I have been noticing from playing the Crew 2 more often as well is before I'd really go after like the highest top speed type of vehicle you can get, for example like the Bugatti Supersport 300 Plus. But what's kind of interesting now is I'm trying to go after cars now that are better with stability and or handling, that don't want to lose themselves and get fishtaily going over like a little hill and or hitting like a curb or something like that. I have noticed the Bugatti seem to be insanely bad. I was testing out the Masked Leader in one way of going around a turn and then like whipping the wheel to the other way. The car would then fix itself and basically straighten out. A lot of the Bugattis will spin out for that matter. Now I have been messing with the handling on many of the hypercars in the Crew 2, and I would say no matter what you do to them, they're most likely going to stay very fishtaily like that, so I feel like many players might be searching for something better, and to my surprise guys, the Masked Leader seems to actually be pretty dang good in that aspect. Now, one thing I'm not going to lie about though is the fact that the Masked Leader only does 296 to like 297 miles an hour. I would say for the really long hyper races, that might be a bit of an issue if you're racing against the Bugatti or many of the other hypercars for that matter that do over 300. But besides that, guys, I would say for the most part in the turns and all that, I feel like the Masked Leader is going to be insanely good. Now that this car is available for everybody, I believe as well, I most likely will try this thing out in summits in the future. It's definitely going to be one of the weirdest cars to actually see in there, but even with the crazy look of this vehicle and the fact that it's like a half demolition derby car in the hypercar category, I would say the Masked Leader is going to be insanely competitive.